Do you want to know what Bears football looks like, feels like, sounds like? I'll tell you exactly what Bears football is all about. It's about Bears fans getting all hyped up for Packers week like this is some type of big rivalry. I know you have decades and decades of tradition, and they're divisional rivals. Key thing, though, is in rivals, you've actually got to have some competitive balance here, and there just isn't. So what's really sad about it is so many Bears fans get so hyped up and hopped up on the Kool-Aid talking about it's Packers week. I hate the Packers. Meanwhile, Packers fans, the more that they focus on the Bears, the bigger losers they become, because why the hell would you be concerned with a second-rate organization? Seriously. I mean, by far the biggest rival in the division for the Packers over the past couple of decades is the Minnesota Vikings. I don't even think the Bears fit into the top 3 or 4 biggest rivals for the Green Bay Packers right now. How could they? Why would they? But nonetheless, here's where we're at. It's getting all hyped up about this imaginary rivalry that really hasn't been a back-and-forth rivalry for goddamn decades. And some of you Bears fans are going to say, oh, there was a couple of years stretch where Lovie Smith and the Bears were pretty successful against the Packers. Yes, and then the second half of Lovie's tenure happened, and then it was back to business as usual during my lifetime at least. But here we are. Week 2 matchup, Sunday Night Football, Bears and Packers. Were certainly this was originally designed to be a spot where NBC thought, hey, the NFL thought, hey, there's a chance the Packers could pass the Bears on the wins list. Let's do it here on Sunday night. And then that's not going to happen because the Bears won in week 1 and the Packers lost in week 1. So if anything, we don't have to hear about that crap all night. We could just actually hear about football and then the other narratives that and agendas that are being driven during the game. But looking at the Chicago Bears, last week in the monsoon conditions, they got their first win under new head coach Matt Eberflus. It wasn't pretty. It certainly wasn't pretty. Their offense sucked in the first half, but they were able to hit some plays in the second half. The defense played well. The speed was apparent to me. 19 unanswered points from this offense in the second half. And on the defensive side of the ball, that was all with, frankly, Roquan Smith being mid. He was not very good in that game. You had a couple of rookies starting on defense in Gordon and Brisker. Like, they will hopefully improve and get better. And the offense, as rough as they were in the first half, the offensive line held up better in the second half. Fields made a couple of good throws, a couple of good plays. And the Bears come into this game with a surprising opening week victory. Meanwhile, for the Green Bay Packers, kind of a recent trend here of coming out to open the season and laying a frickin' egg. And that's exactly what they did. Don't kid yourself. Week 1 in Minnesota, they lost 23-7. And it probably realistically doesn't even feel like it was that close. The Packers certainly missed some big plays on offense. That's both on the wide receivers, and that was on Aaron Rodgers as well, who was pretty pedestrian in that game, under 200 yards passing and 2 turnovers. I could argue some bad play calling, too, by the Packers by not running the ball a little bit more. Like, there were some running lanes to be had against the Vikings, and they had some success, and they just didn't go to it enough. The offensive line was bad in pass protection, hence the 4 sacks given up. Like, it was a really bad performance for the Packers overall offensively. And then defensively, you would think you would look at the Minnesota Vikings and say, hey, Justin Jefferson could kill us. So let's not let him kill us. Let's not let him have 9 receptions, 180-plus receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. And yet the Packers' defense was so dumb that that's exactly what they allowed to happen. Just insane to me. So for the Bears, an ugly win, but a win, still a win. Packers, ugly loss to open the season. So now we come here, week 2, a little more intrigue or interest in this game because the Bears are 1-0. The Packers are 0-1. Could the Packers really go 0-2? New head coach in Chicago. Like, is there a chance that the Bears could actually win this one? And we all know, Bears fans, what the recent history is here. Not just that the Packers have a 103, 95-6 advantage all time in the rivalry against Chicago, but we know that Aaron Rodgers is the Chicago Bears' daddy. Period. It's not up for debate or argument. If that bothers you, then start beating him. And he can't say that anymore. Instead, Aaron Rodgers has a 22-5 record against the Chicago Bears as a starting quarterback. During those 27 games, he's thrown for over 6,700 passing yards, 61 touchdowns, only 10 interceptions. Like, Aaron Rodgers sees the Bears on his schedule twice a year, and he licks his goddamn chops. And we also know the recent history of Matt Nagy and his regime. They only went 1-7 against the Packers in those 4 seasons. And last year, you look at the tail end of Matt Nagy's reign of error, E-R-R-O-R. The Packers won 24-14 and then 45-30. So a lot of history says that the Packers own the Bears, and it's not even just an Aaron Rodgers thing. It goes back to the Brett Favre days. Like, apparently the Bears went to the government and asked for a welfare check, and Brett Favre stole it. Ha ha! Anyways. All right. So what are we looking forward to in this matchup Sunday night? In terms of the injury report, looks like the Bears are going to be without Velus Jones Jr., the third-round wide receiver out of Tennessee. But it looks like the Bears are relatively healthy outside of that, which is good. And then for the Packers, it looks like they might get back Elgton Jenkins at right tackle, Allen Lazard at wide receiver. Jury's still out on David Bakhtiari at the time that I'm recording this. I'm not sure if he is going to play or not. Having Jenkins back alone would be a nice piece for the offensive line of the Packers to get. And then Lazard, their number 1 wide receiver by default. But in general, 2 relatively healthy teams here early in the year, so we should not use injuries going into this game as a massive excuse. One thing that surprises me here is that Green Bay's favored by 10. I'm not surprised that the Packers are favored in this game, and if they would have even been somewhere between 5 to 7 points, I would say that feels like an appropriate amount of money movement, even though the Bears won week 1 and the Packers lost week 1. It's still the Packers in Lambeau, the history, Aaron Rodgers versus Justin Fields. I could see somewhere between 5 to 7 points. But 10 points, that Vegas money has been incredibly disrespectful to the Bears, and I just don't really see it at this point. For the Bears, here's the keys to the game. It's 2 things. It's all about quarterback play, period. Throw the damn ball early and often. If Justin Fields throws for over 300 yards and looks good in this game, but the Bears lose, okay, I'll live. If he has another 125, 150-yard passing performance that looks mid and the Bears win, fuck it, it's stupid. This season is all about Justin Fields. And you're probably going to see Luke Getsy try to commit to running the ball more on Sunday night, which is just really dumb. That's not helping your quarterback develop. And that, at the end of the day, is the name of the game this year. Anything else is losing the damn plot. So offensively, get Justin Fields into a rhythm early, get him into a rhythm often, find out ways to manufacture targets and opportunities for Darnell Mooney, and I would say Cole Kmet as well. Did a horrendous job of that in week 1. Got to be better there. And then defensively, you got to get pressure up the middle on Aaron Rodgers. Like you can say, well, you got the guys coming off the edge like Quinn and Gibson and Robinson, and that can help too, but with a guy like Rodgers, what sometimes could really bother him is that pressure up the middle. The Bears need to be able to get some pressure up the middle on him. That might be bringing Roquan on some blitzes up the middle, doing some stunts to bring your DNs up the middle. You got to get some pressure up the middle on Rodgers and make him uncomfortable. As far as Green Bay goes, they've got to get Aaron Rodgers in a rhythm early. As he was certainly not in any type of rhythm on Sunday against the Vikings, that's for sure. There might be a temptation there. The Packers might think, hey, we could take Jones and Dillon and run on the Bears and, play it a little closer to the vest. No. I think if you're the Packers, you want to come out and you want to reestablish your passing game, especially if you've got Lazard back. Like, you've got to go to it early and often as well. And then for the Packers, I think it's a key to get some edge pressure from Smith and Gary, especially going up against the offensive tackles, rookie 5th-round pick Braxton Jones and Larry Borom. Like, the Bears could be had there. The 49ers had a little bit of success with that at times last week, even though the Bears' offensive line held up relatively well in the entirety of the game. You can get some opportunities to make some plays there. And Justin Fields' pocket presence is a little sketch sometimes. I look at this matchup and I say, there's a lot of reasons for me to be optimistic about the Bears and their chances in week 2. It is not my priority. Again, I want to be very clear here because the priority is Justin Fields and his development. So everything else is secondary. And that's how it should be. If you don't like that, go kick yourself in the dick or whatever. Go argue against the wall. I don't care. The Bears occasionally can beat the Packers playing Bears football. And where does that get them? Time to play modern football. Time to play modern NFL football. But I look at this and I say, I think the Bears' defense is better than the Packers. Obviously, there's a disadvantage at the quarterback position, but it wasn't exactly like Rodgers was on fire in week 1. You know, and there's a history here of the Bears in year 1 of a new coach that they can beat Green Bay. They've done it a few times. And I just look at this matchup and I say, you know, it's easy to see based off of the history why you would go so heavily towards the Packers, but I just don't think it has any basis on current reality. Now, we could go out there Sunday night and the same old sorry-ass Bears in prime time against the Packers and they get steamrolled by 30, but I just don't see that happening right now. There was even a bit of a temptation for me to pick the Bears to win this game. I know Aaron Rodgers' history coming back after losses and all of that. I know the history of coming back off of slow starts and all that. I know his history against the Bears and all of that. But this was a team that showed some resiliency in week 1 when at one point in time they were down 10-0. It looked like an insurmountable lead that the 49ers had, and the Bears came storming back in the second half in the storm. So as much as I want to pick the Bears to win this game, I can't. And Bears fans collectively are breathing a sigh of relief because they do not want that Jeff Jinx. They said, put that on Green Bay if you will, please. I think Green Bay will have just enough to win, like they'll bounce back enough. But I think this game is going to be closer than a lot of people are giving it credit for. I'm going to go final score, Packers 27, Bears 23. But based off of what we saw on week 1, it's absolutely shaping up like this is going to be a ball game on Sunday night. But the number one key thing for the Bears is not the win here. Because I know Bears fans are going to be like, hey, you beat Green Bay, and then they got the Texans, and they got the Giants, and you got a chance to go 4-0. If Justin Fields plays mid or like doo-doo, even if they are 4-0, then it's fucking stupid. It's about Justin Fields. Everything else is secondary.